Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast.
Today, we're going to explore the top news headlines for May 12th.
We've got quite a mix today. Stories touching on security, international relations, domestic policy too.
Yeah, a lot happening. Let's get right into it.
Okay. First up, some really tragic news out of Indonesia.
Yes, an explosion. It happened during the disposal of rejected army munitions. At least 13 people killed.
And the really concerning part is 9 of those were civilians.
Exactly, 9 civilians alongside 4 soldiers. It happened in Garut district, West Java, quite far from the capital, about 300 kilometers.
So what went wrong, do we know?
Well, the Army spokesman, Wahyu Yudhana, he reported the explosion happened when a team was arranging a detonator in a pit. This was after 2 successful disposals, apparently.
But civilians shouldn't have been anywhere near that, surely.
That's the big question, isn't it? Their presence is unclear. The military says they've used the site before multiple times, and, they're promising a thorough investigation.
They need one. Wasn't there another incident last year in Jakarta?
There was, yes. Multiple explosions at an ammo warehouse, but luckily no casualties that time. This time is different, tragically.
Right. Okay, moving over to Nigeria now.
Yeah.
Edo State.
Yes. The Edo State government is taking legal action against the neo-black movement, also known as Black Axe.
This is tied to recent killings and cult violence.
It is, and it seems to follow a public admission, or at least a statement, by self-proclaimed leaders of the group. They were condemning the demolition of a building linked to their activities.
And the government's position.
They're saying the building wasn't just linked, it was a hub, a place for planning violent attacks. They say the demolition was totally in line with the state's anti-cultism law.
And there's more to it. Something about schools.
Yeah, the government is challenging the group's claims that they renovated 6 public schools. They're demanding full disclosure, names, locations, proof, official authorization.
And if they don't provide it?
Legal action for defamation. Plus, they're planning to build a divisional police station right on the site of that demolished building. Kind of a clear message.
Definitely a strong message. More demolitions expected too, it seems.
That's what they're indicating. And Governor Okpopolo is denying any affiliation himself and vowing to dismantle these groups.
Okay, staying in Nigeria, but shifting to national security, troops have made some arrests.
That's right. Nigerian army troops, they've arrested 12 suspected members of the Mamuda terrorist group. It's a Boko Haram faction.
Where did this happen?
In Kaninchi Lake National Park, Niger State. This group, Mamuda, they've been linked to attacks and threats in the border areas, Kwara and Niger State specifically.
So this was part of a specific operation?
Yes, Operation Park Strike Forth. Major General Obina Onabogu, the GOC 2 Division, announced the arrests. He said 2 are confirmed active members. The others, they're believed to be collaborators.
Sounds like a significant operation, though.
It does. Troops apparently combed over 90 kilometers of forest, dislodged insurgents from their stronghold. But, they're still urging residents to be vigilant and cooperate.
Reminder, the threat is still there. Okay, let's look internationally. Norway's sovereign wealth fund.
Yes, a big move here. They've divested from an Israeli company, Paz Retail and Energy.
And the reason?
It's because of the company's operation of fuel infrastructure in West Bank settlements.
Ah, the settlements issue. International law considers them illegal, right?
Under the 4th Geneva Convention, yes, they're widely considered illegal. And the fund's ethical rules, they prohibit supporting companies that maintain these settlements.
So Paz's operations fall under that?
According to the fund's Council on Ethics, yes. They adopted a stricter interpretation back in August 2024, targeting companies supporting Israeli activities in occupied Palestinian territories. They stated Paz contributes to the settlement's perpetuation by operating fuel supply infrastructure there.
And this isn't the first time the fund has done something like this.
No, they previously divested from Bezek, an Israeli telecoms firm, for providing services to West Bank settlements too, so there's a precedent.
Okay, back to Nigeria, and some deeply concerning news from Benue State.
Extremely concerning. Reports are saying terrorists have basically overrun 14 villages in Gwar West local government area.
14 villages. That's huge displacement.
It is. Residents have fled, mostly to IDP camps in Naka, the LGA headquarters, and now they fear Naka itself might be attacked.
Why the fear for Naka specifically?
Well, there are reports of herders being seen around Naka. And this apparently mirrors a pattern seen before attacks in Ukum. So residents are understandably very anxious.
And the security response?
Residents are expressing frustration, feeling there's been a lack of response. Essentially, all 14 villages in that specific area are now abandoned.
What are authorities doing locally?
The executive chairman of Gora West has imposed a curfew, 6:30 p.m., just trying to manage the worsening security situation. This follows recent attacks too, 9 farmers killed just on May 9th.
It's just terrible. Let's shift gears now to the United States. An unusual story involving Air Force One.
Yes, quite unusual. Reports suggest President Donald Trump might accept a luxury Boeing 747-8 aircraft from the Qatari royal family.
Accept it as a gift for Air Force One.
Potentially as a replacement, yes. It's one of the most advanced commercial planes out there. It would need significant retrofitting, of course, for presidential use. That could take up to 2 years.
Has the president seen this plane?
Apparently, yes. He and his aides reportedly toured the jet earlier this year. The deal is being framed as a government-to-government gift from Qatar's Ministry of Defense to the U.S. Department of Defense.
Why now? Is there an issue with the current replacement plan?
Well, there have been frustrations reportedly from President Trump about delays in the official Air Force One replacement program by Boeing. That's now expected maybe 2027. So this Qatari offer comes amidst that backdrop.
But accepting such a valuable gift from a foreign government?
Yeah.
Surely there are ethical questions.
Absolutely. Ethical and legal concerns are definitely being raised about the propriety of accepting such a significant gift like this.
Okay. Also in the U.S., President Trump has made a big announcement on drug prices.
Yes, he announced he would sign an executive order aiming to slash prescription drug prices. He mentioned figures like 30% to 80%.
That's a huge range. How does he plan to achieve that?
He said it would be achieved by instituting a most favored nations policy. The idea is basically to match the lowest price paid for a drug anywhere in the world.
Right. The U.S. pays notoriously high prices compared to other countries.
Exactly. Unlike many other developed nations, the U.S. lacks central government price regulation for all drugs. President Trump tried to tackle this in his first term, faced a lot of opposition, legal and political.
So expect pushback again.
Oh, almost certainly. The pharmaceutical industry is expected to push back hard against this. It's worth noting, former President Biden did sign legislation in 2022 allowing Medicare to negotiate some drug prices, but this executive order seems much broader.
I'll have to watch that one. Now, U.S.-China trade talks. Any progress?
Well, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent described the weekend talks in Switzerland with Chinese officials as productive. That's the word he used.
Productive. What does that mean in practical terms?
He said the discussions yielded a great deal and that he and the U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer briefed President Trump on Saturday evening. The talks involved China's vice premier and 2 vice ministers.
This is important because tensions had flared up again, hadn't they?
Yes, significantly.
Yeah.
Since President Trump returned to the presidency in 2025, we saw a re-escalation. Remember the new 145% tariff on Chinese imports, and China retaliated. So these talks are happening against that pretty confrontational backdrop.
So productive could be a positive sign, potentially?
Potentially, yes. Any step towards de-escalation would be watched very closely.
Okay, let's jump across the Atlantic. The UK and immigration policy regarding care workers.
Right. A major policy shift announced the UK government will end international recruitment of care workers.
The change.
It's part of wider immigration reforms aimed at reducing net migration. But importantly, it's also framed as addressing exploitation. There have been revelations of abuse and even debt bondage involving migrant care workers.
That sounds serious. Have actions been taken against employers?
Yes, over 470 care providers have actually had their licenses suspended since 2022 for violating sponsorship conditions. That affected around 40,000 workers, apparently.
So what happens to workers already there?
The government says current migrant care workers with legal sponsorship can remain. They can extend their stay, change sponsors, or even apply for settlement eventually. This change affects future recruitment.
And the long-term plan for care.
The focus is shifting to training a domestic workforce, establishing what they're calling fair pay agreements, and expanding the care workforce pathway. There's also an independent commission looking into the future of adult social care.
Okay, finally today, the situation in Ukraine. Talks about talks and ongoing conflict.
Yes, the UK hosted European ministers recently. France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the EU, this Weimar Plus group. They were talking about securing a ceasefire and Well, repelling Russian aggression.
This follows that visit to Kiev, right, where leaders called for a ceasefire.
Exactly. Leaders from France, Germany, Poland, and the UK were in Kyiv. They called on Russia to agree to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire, just to allow peace talks to happen. Washington reportedly backs this call.
Has Russia responded to the ceasefire call?
Not directly to the ceasefire part. Russian President Putin did propose direct negotiations with Ukraine, suggesting Istanbul on May 15th, but no word on halting the fighting first.
And the fighting continues.
Tragically, yes. Despite these calls, the Ukrainian Air Force reported over 100 Russian drone attacks just overnight. It really highlights the grim reality on the ground.
What about President Zelensky? Is he willing to meet Putin?
He's offered to meet Putin in Turkey, yes. But it's unclear if he'd attend without a ceasefire in place first. President Trump, for his part, has stated that direct talks are needed to see if peace is even possible.
And there was also talk of sanctions at the London meeting.
Yes, further sanctions are expected to be announced against those backing Russia's invasion. Also, in a related development, President Zelensky spoke with Pope Leo XIV.
Oh, what about?
It was their first phone call. Zelensky invited the Pope to visit Ukraine, hoping it would bring hope. They also discussed the thousands of Ukrainian children reportedly deported by Russia. Kyiv is seeking the Vatican's help for their return. Zelensky briefed the Pope on the ceasefire offer, too.
Any plans for them to meet in person?
They apparently agreed to plan an in-person meeting in the near future. Pope Leo XIV had already urged for peace in Ukraine, echoing his predecessor, Francis.
A lot of diplomatic movement, but overshadowed by the ongoing violence.
That sums it up well, yes.
Thank you for listening to the Today's Top News Headlines on IAMC Radio and Podcast.